Beneath the surface of our planet lies a world of impenetrable darkness, where silence reigns and every step forward could be our last. What drives humans to risk everything in these deadly underground realms? This is the story of Black Cave, where one man's search for adventure met with an unimaginable end. In April 1995, Thomas Edwin Benning, a man known for his fearless spirit and love of exploration, entered the infamous Black Cave in Arizona. The cave, with its intricate labyrinth of tunnels and glittering obsidian-like rock formations, was a geological wonder, yet it was equally notorious for its dangers. Despite its allure, Black Cave had claimed its share of lives, and its depths were a place even seasoned adventurers respected. But for Thomas, the call of discovery outweighed caution. Carrying only a miner's lamp, Thomas stepped into the yawning darkness. He brought no backup light, no food, no helmet, and no climbing tools. His confidence, honed through years of outdoor exploration, would not be enough to save him. The first chambers of the cave greeted him with a deceptive ease. Their walls wide and their floors smooth, light from the entrance lingered here, making the descent feel less threatening. But further in, the shadows deepened. The air grew heavier and colder, and the true nature of Black Cave began to reveal itself. Why did Thomas choose to explore alone? Perhaps it was the solitude he craved, the ability to move at his own pace, unbound by the limitations of a group. He ventured deeper, navigating passageways that became progressively narrower. It was a path he had partially explored on previous visits, but this time he allowed his curiosity to guide him into an unmapped side tunnel. The walls closed in, and the floor angled sharply downward. Here, the miner's lamp was his sole lifeline, its steady beam slicing through the black void ahead. Then came the moment every craver dreads. The light began to flicker. Each time the beam faltered, the oppressive darkness encroached, swallowing the space around him. He paused, tapping the lamp, trying to coax it back to life. But in the stillness of the cave, where time and space lose meaning, the light failed completely. The tunnel plunged into utter blackness. Thomas was left with no choice but to rely on touch. The rock was cold beneath his fingers, smooth in some places, jagged in others. Each movement forward was slow, deliberate, as he searched for a way out. He struck matches for fleeting moments of illumination. Each brief burst of light revealed vaults that seemed to close in, passages that twisted unpredictably, and no sign of the familiar route back. The matches burned quickly, their meager supply dwindling to nothing. Do you think you could find your way back under such conditions? For Thomas, the stakes were survival itself. He left markers, a strip of his clothing here, his shoes there, in a desperate attempt to retrace his steps. But the cave's labyrinthine structure made it impossible to discern direction. Hours turned into days. Without food or water, Thomas's strength waned. He became disoriented, his body and mind consumed by exhaustion. In his final act of desperation, he lowered himself into a fissure, hoping it might lead to an exit. Instead, it became his tomb. Wedged at the hips, unable to free himself, Thomas called out, but his voice was swallowed by the rock. Above ground, his absence didn't go unnoticed. When he failed to return, his wife altered authorities. Search teams scoured the cave for days, but their efforts were hampered by its complexity and lack of reliable maps. They found his car parked near the entrance and some personal belongings he had left behind, but no trace of him deeper within. Eventually, the search was called off, and Thomas was declared missing. His family was left with unanswered questions and unbearable grief. It wasn't until December 1996, over 20 months later, that a group of cavers mapping Black Cave stumbled upon evidence of Thomas's ordeal. Scattered clothing, a burned matchbook, and his broken miner's lamp led them to his body, still trapped in the fissures where he had perished. The discovery brought a somber closure to his family, but it also highlighted the brutal reality of caving. Nature is unyielding and indifferent. Black Cave's tragedy was not an isolated incident. Just months later, in August 1995, a chillingly similar story unfolded in Colorado's Needles Hollow. This time, it was 15-year-old twins Tim and Tom Smashfield, whose love for adventure ended in heartbreak. Needles' Hollow was a local legend, infamous among cavers for its dangerously tight passages. Despite its reputation, Tim and Tom convinced their parents to let them explore it. The twins, brimming with youthful enthusiasm, brought only flashlights, a snack and a small bottle of water each. To them, this was a summer adventure, an exciting challenge, not a life-threatening expedition. The cave's entrance mirrored their expectations, wide, manageable and even welcoming. The boys laughed as they navigated the first corridors, their voices echoing faintly off the rock walls. But as they ventured deeper, the terrain shifted, the walls narrowed, forcing them to crawl on hands and knees. By the time they reached a fork in the passage, their excitement had dulled into unease. They decided to split up, believing it would allow them to explore both paths quickly. Tom took the left passage, which looped back towards the entrance. Tim chose the right, a path that soon narrowed into a suffocating bottleneck. Crawling forward, Tim felt the rock pressing against his chest and shoulders. The passage angled sharply, forcing him to contort his body into unnatural positions. Still, he pushed onward, convinced the path would widen. But it didn't. Instead, Tim became wedged in an impossibly tight bend. His chest compressed with each shallow breath, the rock unyielding against him. He tried to wriggle backward, but his position made it impossible. He called out for his brother, but his voice barely carried through the dense stone. Alone in the suffocating darkness, Tim's situation grew dire. Tom, meanwhile, had returned to the fork and realized Tim wasn't there. Alarmed, he retraced his steps into the right passage, shouting for his brother. The twists and turns of the cave distorted their voices, making communication nearly impossible. After several fruitless attempts, Tom exited the cave and called for help. Rescue teams arrived swiftly, equipped with tools and expertise. They located Tim within hours, but their relief was short-lived. His position in the narrow bottleneck posed a daunting challenge. The rock surrounding him was unstable, and any attempt to chisel it away risked a collapse. For 28 agonizing hours, rescuers worked to free him. They communicated with Tim, who was conscious but weakening. His flashlight had long since died, and the darkness was absolute. Despite their best efforts, Tim's condition worsened. The position of his body restricted his breathing, and he eventually succumbed to asphyxiation. The emotional toll of the rescue attempt was immense. The rescuers, many of whom were seasoned cavers themselves, were haunted by the knowledge that Tim's position was nearly impossible to overcome without endangering others. Several described the experience as the most heartbreaking of their careers, knowing that their expertise and tools, which had saved countless lives in the past, were insufficient in the face of Needles Hallow's merciless design. The tragedy spurred discussions within the caving community about the ethical limits of rescue operations, the necessity of stricter guidelines for amateur exploration, and the psychological impact on those who try and sometimes fail to bring others back alive. Two tragedies, separated by miles but united by their shared themes: the dangers of underprepared exploration. Why do people continue to explore these deadly realms? The answers are as complex as the caves themselves. For some, it's the allure of discovery, the possibility of uncovering something no one else has seen before. For others, it's the challenge, the thrill of pushing physical and mental limits. But as these stories show, caves are not mere playgrounds. They are indifferent force of nature, offering no guarantees and tolerating no mistakes. Caving is one of the most dangerous pursuits in the world. It demands preparation, training, and equipment. The stories of Thomas Edward Benning and Tim Smashfield are more than tales of tragedy. They are warnings. They remind us that nature is not something to be conquered, but something to be respected. For every successful exploration, countless others end in injury, loss, or heartbreak. As we reflect on these harrowing tales, let us ask ourselves, how far are we willing to go into the darkness, and at what cost? Like, share, and subscribe for more gripping stories of exploration, tragedy, and the lessons they leave behind. Stay curious, but most importantly, stay safe.